Welcome everyone to our third webinar of the Insurtech UK Tech webinar series. This is our third or fourth every Wednesday at 2 p.m. of November. Can I just ask everyone who's not on the panel to stay on mute? And if you have any questions during the session, if you could please put them in the chat feature in Zoom. And then we have a designated Q&A bit at the end, where everyone in the panelists on the panel can go to and we'll look at all your questions. So we very kindly got Picasso, Genesis Technology and Armour Karma on the panel today. So I'll hand over to Rich to kind of just kick off the session and do a quick introduction for you as well.
Thank you, Ali. Hi, everyone. So I was just going to start with quick introductions, really. So you've kind of got 3 for 1 here. So I'll be going through a few slides first of all, just to obviously start to introduce technology ecosystems and what that kind of means to us. But equally, we've got a couple of our partners really, Genesis and Armour Karma, on the line as well to talk through their experiences and their kind of unique take around technology ecosystems. So yeah, I'm Richard Tomlinson. I'm the Managing Director of Picasso Inform, and Picasso Inform are the kind of new kids on the block from a data enrichment perspective. So we've been working in the background for the last 3 years, building our business, making all the significant connections with data partners, with platforms. And as of March of this year, we launched our organization and are kind of building that from now on, really. So that's me. Andre, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody. Andre Symes from Genesis Technologies. We're a full stack cloud-based modular insurance system that I suppose goes around today's conversation, and we try and facilitate ecosystems through items and technologies like APIs, which is currently on the forefront of all of our development cycles. We service the insurer, broker, and the MGA space. Historically from South Africa, and been operating in the UK now for the last 2 years, and we've now got a footprint of just over 10 customers in the UK and about 40 globally, operating on four continents, 16 countries, and we've got 100 staff, and we're now just popped over £1 billion of GWP on the platform, which is quite exciting.
Thanks, Andre. And Ben?
Hi, I'm Ben, CEO and founder of Armour Karma. Fairly new Insurtech. You may have seen a few bits and pieces flying around, but we've stayed fairly underground until this point. We are focused on catering for the insurance needs of the next generation in a truly ethical way. So hopefully I'll be telling you a bit more about that in the presentation itself, so I won't give too much away now. But we've got 2 wonderful partners here with Picasso and Genesis, and I'll be sharing a bit about our experiences with them as well.
Great, thanks, Ben. Right, well, without further ado, shall we just nip to the slides? Ali, we're not going to hopefully barrage you with hundreds of slides here. We've got I think we've got about 8 in total, so you'll be relieved to hear. I think as Ali mentioned, there will be a Q&A, so please drop in some questions either into the chat or just at the end we can open it up. If people aren't too shy, they can just kind of ask questions of any of us and engage in whatever debate. So next slide, please, Ali. Yeah, so I wanted to start really, talking around the context for a technology ecosystem. And I think that that comes from a number of different factors, as I've kind of listed there, really. And I don't think any of these will be, individually a massive surprise to anybody. And apologies if I'm kind of teaching you to suck eggs here, but I think it bears repetition and bears summarising, because I think all of the things added together, really lead to a perfect storm for an ecosystem. So, I've started there really with consumer demands, and obviously, that as ever is changing, and with everything happening in the world and with increased digitization, with the expectation and what's happening in other industries, in banking, in retail, you know, across social media. What consumers are really seeing is, you know, really easy to use on-demand media, huge smartphone penetrations. We've got 4G, 5G coming through. You know, it means consumers they expect to be able to self-serve easily, quickly, through a slick interface, and generally enjoy a frictionless experience. So that's, you know, that's one of the things, and obviously should be central to our considerations and to our strategic planning, really. As I mentioned, technology, the tools are out there, you know, whether that's SaaS, platform as a service, data as a service, APIs, many other acronyms, cloud, etc. You know, all of this makes almost anything possible, really. You know, when you sit there and kind of brainstorm and blue sky everything, pretty much anything is possible now, and it's possible for a business of any size. You know, it's no longer just limited to, you know, the kind of really big organizations who can afford to put the kind of infrastructure in, because all of these technologies are so scalable. You know, everybody from the, you know, kind of startup, you know, right the way through the continuum can kind of afford these technologies and implement them quickly as well. In the insurance world, you know, distribution is continuing to proliferate. There are more and more channels available, both direct and through partner distribution channels, that insurance provider can access. So again, it's more and more options, you know, to be faced with, which, you know, as I'll kind of go on to, is, you know, can be a blessing and a curse. Regulation, we've seen lots of changes over the last, or potential changes over the last, you know, few months and year or two, particularly the FCA investigation, preliminary findings into dual pricing and what they might do around the APRs for premium finance, particularly affecting the kind of broker market. But all of that means that, you know, practices and, you know, how we treat customers has to change. And, you know, I'm sure most of the people on this call will agree and are absolutely in line with the need to do that, certainly from an ethical perspective. And, you know, a subject that's very close to my heart, data. You know, and we've certainly seen the amount of data just increase exponentially over the last year or two. And again, you know, in terms of breadth, depth, the ability to apply it in real time, and, you know, apply it with the latest techniques in machine learning, AI and data science, ultimately to deliver greater insight to Insurtechs, to MGAs, and ultimately to the consumers. And finally, products. You know, there seems to be a new niche, a new product, whether that be from established insurers or new Insurtechs, you know, focusing on those niches and bringing that out all the time. So, you know, again, there are so many options there, and if you did a matrix between all of those things, there's obviously many thousands of different ways you can structure your business and support your business. Next, Ali. Sorry, I was trying to press down, then it doesn't work. Yeah, so this is an Insurtech member slide, actually. So it's good to see all of the three people on this call present there, along with many others. And I guess what I'm trying to illustrate here is that there are so many options, and, you know, yes, you could build all of that yourself. You know, you can take advantage of those technologies and build it yourself. But you know, insurers, MGAs, Insurtechs, that, you know, we're kind of around to fulfill their core purpose, really, which is around, you know, serving your customers well, understanding risk, and delivering a, you know, a good customer service. So, you know, that leaves us with wanting to integrate all of these capabilities and technologies. But do you really want, you know, 100 different integration, 100 different partners, 100 different ways of managing those relationships, really? So, so I guess that's the challenge. Again, anything is possible. It's kind of how you rise to that challenge, really. And it'll come as no surprise. It's not a spoiler to say that we think technology ecosystems are the kind of way forward from that perspective. Next, please, Ellie. So just starting to define really what a technology ecosystem is, and I've just lifted this from Nielsen actually, but it's really the glue in between the whole breadth of providers, suppliers, tech stacks, data providers, etc. on one side, and the users of that tech stack and the data on the other, really. So we're talking about making those connections and enabling that capability to work across the board, really. Next, please, Ellie. So just drilling into, I guess, what that means to us, and I've put a data enrichment hub, as I would do, in the middle here, because that's what we do. But I'm conscious that I guess most organisations will see themselves as the centre of these hubs. An insurer, an MGA, an Insurtech will see themselves as the centre of that hub, calling out to many others. But the point here is that this one hub, one connection is in turn making connections to tens of, if not sometimes hundreds of other organizations. And it's not just the physical technical connection, it's the really making sense of that, understanding what, as an MGA, as an Insurtech, the requirement is, and kind of filtering that and using their experience to really understand, what is the specific thing they need. So the example here is a data enrichment hub. So we have lots of things across there. We have fraud. Within there might be a number of different, fraud databases, reciprocal databases that you can access to understand. But, we've put 3 examples on there, anonymous examples. But, there are many different fraud providers. There are many different databases that you can access. From a financial perspective, there are 3 main credit bureaus, for example. There are different types of credit information. There's some quite exciting stuff that's happening from an open banking side of things. There are many other options that we could have put on there. If you're a property insurer, there are many different sources again of property, and that continues around there for identity, for analytics, vehicle data, and then hooking into insurance providers as well. And then the ecosystem, I guess, like a constellation of stars, just continues to branch out and branch out almost infinitely through these connections, really. And then we carry on going around, and we start to consider pricing and distribution, and the links that many have either directly into those through software houses, or into indirectly through software houses, or directly into price comparison websites, or directly through their own website or other channels, really. So it just starts to build into this kind of infinite web of connections and possibilities. So it's really making sense of that we're seeking to do, and to narrow down the list of connections that each individual and each MGA, each Insurtech needs to make, so that they can have maybe 2, 3, 4 really core connections, core partnerships, core partners that they trust and can work with and can operate in their best interests, and to cut out all of that kind of all of that donkey work, really, and but also to leverage the experience that those organizations have. And obviously we are doing exactly the same thing in lots of scenarios, either through our connections through to credit bureaus, for example. They in turn have they will have hundreds of connections through to all of the major banks, building societies, credit card companies, and many other data sources as well. And so we leverage their knowledge, their experience, and it means that we don't have to. We can just kind of suck that experience and that data through our pipes, and that means that our clients can benefit from that. Next, thank you, Ellie. So I've just started to bring that to life a little bit now, and I hope Ben doesn't mind. I've used Armour Karma as a guinea pig here, in terms of what that means. So obviously, we're not going to be delivering everything to everybody. What is required is a process of really, getting to grips with and understanding what the fundamental requirements are, both on day one and in the future, and what that roadmap looks like. What is an organization looking to achieve? Obviously cost is a factor as well. But really what's the biggest bang for the buck can organizations get easily, quickly, and then where can we move to, over in a phased approach from there, really. So what we've just highlighted here is that, actually some of these things, either aren't appropriate at all, or aren't appropriate in the first instance. So for Armour Karma, we'll obviously be enriching their policies, their claims, their quotes, and taking feeds in, and helping them understand a bit more insight into each of those and the dynamics and how that's changing over time. Equally, we'll be enriching that with, in the short term, credit reference agency information, both to understand the financial position and stress that an individual might be under, but also fundamentally to confirm identity in the first instance, to make sure that they are who they say they are, and really try to decrease the fraud in the first instance. And that's kind of done through the analytics piece. So we always prefer to do a bespoke analytics piece for our clients, and put something together that really reflects their specific needs and requirements. And equally, we need to do that physical integration into those into that organisation. Next, please, Ellie. And then moving through, as I say, I think we can start at a certain place and just really ensure that clients have got a good basis that ticks their kind of phase one boxes, but actually where do we go through from there, and how can we then easily integrate? And this is obviously a benefit of that ecosystem. We can easily integrate and add to that capability over time as we learn more, and we work with what's working and what's not working so well. So for example, in the Armour Karma instance, we're looking at additional credit bureau data sources, looking at an open banking trial, and also looking at what might be due from tightening up on the fraud side of things, from a reciprocal fraud database side of things. So just adding to that capability and providing more and more value down the line. Okay, thank you, Ellie. Yeah, so I'm just going to hand over to Andre now to see how it works for a platform ecosystem.
Thanks for that. And before I get started on the boring stuff, I think just a massive word of congratulations to a fellow Insurtech UK member, Equipsme, for winning Insurtech of the Year last night at the British Insurance Awards. So well done to them. It's good to see some of the people coming out of this group really achieving some success. Having gotten talking about the cool stuff, bound down to the boring stuff, but I suppose ecosystems these days really have become probably one of the new buzzwords, kind of the Insurtech of 2020 now. But what does this really mean? And Richard was very much on point when he was talking about that every person seems to think of themselves as the center of some sort of an ecosystem. The challenge with that is that it isn't just a one-dimensional or two-dimensional ecosystem. We're actually part of a three-dimensional multiverse, effectively. If we look from the data point of view and the various different bureaus that Richard would lean upon to create his data ecosystem, the same thing can be said from a policy admin point of view. And I see some of our fellow colleagues here, James, and I see Aventus here, they will probably preach the same thing. That the only way for us really to truly leverage things like the network effect and to really generate complementaries within the ecosystem is to be able to jump between the different ecosystems. And that's where you can actually leverage Metcalfe's law and understand the multiple returns on leveraging various ecosystems. And what I've done here is just kind of outlined predominantly a couple of areas that we try and focus on to find best of breed partners in various other ecosystems to try and offer people like Ben and his organization and Equips Me and their organization the ability to lean upon other ecosystems to increase their product offering. The one thing that I also picked up, Richard, that you mentioned there that was quite interesting is that, you know, we were talking about, you mentioned that ecosystems are now available to everybody, even the small guys. I've kind of seen it slightly differently. It's the small guys that are able to leverage ecosystems a lot quicker than the larger guys. And it's now trying to find a way that we can get the larger guys to accept and adopt the smaller Insurtech ecosystems. And that is an interesting thing. So I suppose all the little arrows that we've got on here represents connectors. And that is ultimately what is at the core of any ecosystem, is that it's something that connects something else and connects it in a constructive way. And at the moment, the way we do that is using APIs. Everybody has got some sort of an API. Not all APIs are born equal, as my fellow tech friends will be able to tell you. But that is the way that we can connect. So the question is that you want to start an MGA, you want to start a small brokerage or a small carrier. What do you have to think about? You can't be all and build all yourself. Those are multi-million-pound projects. Why not lean on this network that we have around us, the one we are physically talking to right now, and talk about why don't we use this Insurtech over here, that Insurtech over here, because that might be the best combination of ecosystem players for today's case. A year ago, none of us anticipated what happened with COVID, and I don't want to go down the COVID route because I think we're all got a bit of COVID fatigue. But the point being is that we're in a very different place today than it was a year ago. The technologies we need today are very different than they were a year ago. And there is absolutely no way that we know what is going to be the next big thing next year. What are the influencers going to tell us is the new technology next year? But we need to be able to create a mechanism that we can actually adopt that. Be it some new data enrichment unicorn that pops up. Can we couple that into our existing platform or not? Can my business leverage that or not? Yes, no. If I cannot connect to that, it's not part of the ecosystem. So we need to find ways of doing that. Next year, I'm an MGA right now. I don't do claims. Potentially, I want to have a claims mandate one day. Do I have the ability to plug in a claims module? Do I have a claims module? No. So how do we talk about doing those things? So I think ultimately, in summary, my point is that for us to be able to get the benefits of the ecosystem, we first need to have a mechanism of creating that. And I suppose most of the Insurtechs around this table will have some sort of an API layer, which is fantastic. But how do we get mass adoption of that and create an ecosystem for the larger carriers? I suppose that also starts transitioning a bit more into a digital transformation discussion rather than an ecosystem play in total. That's me, by the way.
Thank you, Andre. That's really useful. Appreciate that. Ellie, next slide, please.
Perfect. Thanks, Andre. Thanks, Rich. So yeah, I said a little bit about kind of our ambitions in introduction. So effectively, we feel insurance isn't working currently for the next generation. So we're going about with our ecosystem to fix this and really tackle this head on. So as a bit of background, our first product is a fully subscription-based next-gen renters focused alternative to contents insurance. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's kind of the way we're going with this. We really want to provide something that's different to the existing players and something that's a bit of an alternative. So developing this ecosystem around us and with Picasso and Genesis was a very kind of conscious choice. But it wasn't without its reservations, as I'm sure a lot of Insurtechs went through the same process. Do you trust other organizations to have the same passion and enthusiasm for what you're trying to tackle as you do internally with your team? And that's obviously going to be your biggest challenge of the day. So naturally, we went through an incredibly hefty partner analyzing and position and went through a lot of different partners and fortunately landed upon both Picasso and Genesis, who have been absolutely superb selection for us, and their teams have really shared the enthusiasm, and that's exactly why we chose them. They really have that mission to make the difference where we want to make the difference. So it felt very natural to be working alongside them on this. So as many of you know well, starting in Insurtech is incredibly challenging and full of hurdles. I'm sure we've all had some big headaches over that process, and some late nights and lost sleep, combined with a global pandemic, as Andre mentioned before, creates a bit of a hellstorm to deal with. So we were very grateful that we had this ecosystem in place for when this happened. So a few of the actual kind of advantages of this have really kind of shone through at this time, which I'll go through kind of below on the slide there. Apologies for the cheesy quote, but tough times don't last, tough ecosystems do. And it's incredibly fitting for this period for us. With the amount of hurdles that have come our way, we've stuck with our ecosystem and tackled them together. And that's kind of really the first point there is resilience. So yes, strength in numbers, but probably more importantly, something Rich touched upon at the start as well, is strength in experience. We can't underestimate the power of the amount of experience that our partners have. Picasa being one of them, the amount of experience they have in the data and credit area is just insane compared to kind of what we would be able to achieve internally. And the same goes for Genesis and their experience of tech. So really, it's allowed us that capability of problem solving at incredibly quick rates, which we wouldn't have been able to do without these partners. So secondly, 5 with the power of 50. So effectively, it really is operating as a bit of a super force. We can only achieve so much as a group of 5, and we can only tackle so much as a group of 5. But when we have as many people as this partner with us, it really does help us tackle these issues incredibly quickly at a rate of knots. And I'm sure both Genesis and Picasa can attest to this, but we've had certain periods where we've needed some very immediate help and immediate kind of support to bring stuff to the table quickly. And it's enabled us to have 20, 30 people all working on the same thing for the same solution and bring it at much quicker rates to the table than we would have done on our own, which obviously incredibly grateful for. Probably most importantly for us is this third point. It's having this tech ecosystem has enabled us to really focus on our own value proposition. It's incredibly easy to spread yourself quite thinly here and want to retain all aspects, because that will be the natural position here, and obviously to retain as much value as possible. But bringing in different organizations to assist in their areas of expertise where you could go in there, it's definitely very beneficial to do so, and it has been for us. So we've utilized an ecosystem to really focus our efforts on the areas and value proposition points that we really wanted to kind of push forward, being kind of the customer relationship and product innovation. And had we been focusing on all the other aspects where if we didn't have an ecosystem, we would have really been spread thinly and probably would have taken a few more years to get to where we were, and a hell of a lot more funding, I'll say that. And then lastly, no shortcuts. Think of the loss ratio. So it's very easy in this position. Innovation and buzzwords can be incredibly exciting for many insurers to jump on board with and just push forward with, but you have to run a sustainable portfolio. And that's really the key to longevity in this space. And harnessing that ecosystem has really allowed us to make sure we're not taking any shortcuts. So the likes of Picasa with the risk management side of things really allow us to really bolster areas of risk management, allowing us to really push the boundaries in other areas and really kind of truly innovate where it would have been difficult to do so without that support. So I think, utilizing the ecosystem has been truly great for us. Couldn't have asked for better partners in Picasa and Genesis. There are a number of other partners as well that we are utilizing, but that's fair to say that Picasa and Genesis have been very key in this process. Yeah, we wouldn't have changed anything. I think it's been one of our best business decisions to date. And that's me.
Just to fall back, or just to go loop back onto that, Ben, I think what is really interesting is that this forum had a conversation, but about 2 weeks ago, I think James York headed it up, about buy versus build. And effectively, if you can build or buy a network and buy an ecosystem, a scalable, changeable, dynamic ecosystem, you can effectively very quickly just plug in and plug out what you want to shape something new. Previously, we've likened it to the Mr. Potato Head. I mean, Ben, both of us don't know where your business is going to be in 2 years' time, but maybe we need to unplug Mr. Potato Head's ear and plug in another nose on the side of his head. We don't know what that looks like. But if you have a potato that can take all of these things and adopt other ecosystems, it really gives you access to change. And access to change is something that the incumbents don't have. And that is an advantage that we have above them.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we've been likened to a potato before, but I'll definitely take that. And the agility that brings us is just supreme. And, you know, we were already working on a number of products kind of outside of this kind of first product, because it's so quick to do so within this ecosystem and so simple to do so within this ecosystem.
Just very quickly, but Ben, you didn't really touch on the ethical side, which I think is really important of Armacama. Do you mind, yeah, just mentioning that side of things?
Absolutely. So effectively, when a customer takes out a subscription, they get to pick from a panel of 4 charities, of which a quarter of our commission revenue goes to that charity every single month. We've got a big kind of community goal, Project Million, of raising £1 million for these charities across 3 years. So, you know, it's really important to me and everyone in the team to be tackling this, and we've got some fantastic charity partners on board with us here to really make this a reality.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Andre. I guess, Ellie, we're just going to open it up to questions now. If anybody's got any questions for Andre, Ben, myself.
Yeah, I've seen one's just come in from Mark. I don't know, Mark, if you've literally just sent it. Maybe if you just want to ask it, if you want to take yourself off mute and ask the question. Or I see Mark's not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is from Mark Heaver. When looking at ecosystems, how do you manage governance, administration, and interoperability between APIs and entities? Technologies such as distributed ledger technology, as demonstrated by various insurance consortia, have shown promise in addressing some of these issues along with increased privacy. Does Insurtech UK see potential in creating a consortia-style ecosystem that could leverage this technology? Andre, you best to answer that out of us.
Yeah, I think DLT is one of those technologies that a lot of people, including myself, have got quite a bit of faith on. I suppose it's about finding the right square hole to put this plug in. You know, DLT, and particularly you know, some more of the crypto stuff around that have got a lot of hype in the past. But I mean, just looking at our friends across the pond in the US, imagine having some DLT tracking some of the elections. That would really have helped out, right? But absolutely, the concerns that you have about DLT at the moment is, from a GDPR point of view on our side, is that it's your right to be forgotten. Once the information, either internal information or external information, is on the block, what do you then do with it? How do you get rid of it? How do you then audit that? And I suppose there's some complications around that. So very much, I believe, leaning towards the question about regulation and corporate governance around that is probably going to be your biggest challenge.
Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear me now. I'm managed to come off at the scramble of my headset there. Sorry, yeah, I mean, it's just looking at some of the, specifically the technology provider R3 with their product Corda has found some traction with some insurance consortia such as B3I and Risk, I think it's RiskBlock or RiskStream over in the US, which allows the point about GDPR and right to be forgotten is extremely valid, I suppose, in so far as it's a very real concern. However, some of the advantages that can be garnered by having a distributed system of interaction, effectively, it allows you to create a more of a market level operating system rather than proprietary systems. I know APIs are fantastic, and they're great at exposing data, and we can all do our own things with them, but the very nature of REST is that you can have data that the fragmentation of data can be an issue. Referential integrity could be an issue, especially when sort of coordination between two parties is important. I suppose it's my other question. I was sort of picking on DLT a little bit, but it's sort of a wider question of sort of when we're looking to develop something like an ecosystem. You do need some sort of governance. You do need some sort of even if it's kind of a directory of APIs, right? Say, look, obviously we have a great group here, but in terms of, look, here's company, here's Insurtech X, they can expose these specific services via API, for example. Here's how you could onboard with them. Here's how you could connect with them. While that remains a proprietary implementation for each entity involved, and while there's no sort of central directory or sort of governance around or transparency around who's doing what, it's then hard to enact that sort of symbiotic development because you don't necessarily know. I know these sort of meetups and discussions are very helpful, but it's whether Insurtech UK, for example, would see potential as like my question here of sort of developing. Even if it's sort of a set of standards or a set of sort of interoperability, like a schema almost, that would be sort of implemented roughly by the members of Insurtech, UK, that could then act as some sort of directory. I know that's quite a lot to wrap up in a single question, but I suppose that's kind of where I was getting at, how to address that sort of issue.
I mean, that feels like an Insurtech UK question. But I don't know if Ellie, you want to pick that up, or if you want to take that away. But it feels like something that's certainly worth looking at.
We actually have a council meeting after this, so I can always bring it up as an AO on your behalf, Mark. And
yeah, it's just because we're talking about ecosystems, right? And it's how do we build and promote ecosystems? They don't kind of just sporadically happen in that regard. And as if you want people to kind of work together in many ways, you have to know who these people are, and you have to have like a common language or a common understanding of ways that sort of business is carried out, I suppose, in order to help kind of facilitate that from a pragmatic perspective, which is kind of what I was getting at. But it is probably, I guess, more for Insurtech UK at large.
But it's a great question nonetheless, and I suppose there's been a lot of attempts to try and group ecosystems together. Look, as long as the integration points between the different parties remain a standard protocol or a universal protocol that people can use, you can interconnect them as they want. Having a repository, I suppose, of who can connect to what and what value they add to various people and what value they could add to various people, that's going to be an incredibly valuable piece of information to whoever sits on that. And I suppose once there's a lot of value in who owns this ecosystem, how do you become part of this ecosystem, and how do you get your particular brand out there? Someone is going to monetize it, or someone's going to look at monetizing it. With that is going to come regulation. And I fear that if we start over formalizing ecosystems, what might happen is that we might slow it down. That's currently ecosystem plugging in and plugging out is one of its biggest advantages. So I suppose with regulation comes some sort of a slowdown in that. And we need to be cautious, I suppose, about turning it into a slow-moving, the EDI switches of the old days, again, where we go, look, who can plug into this, who can't plug into this, and then someone controlling that and trying to put transactional values on those APIs as an example.
Yeah, I suppose my point of raising it as an issue is to almost prevent that, because I guess there's a point of an ecosystem is to avoid the sort of winner takes all, dynamic, and it's kind of how to introduce a concept which is you know, which kind of is a bit of a paradox in many ways. Okay, yeah, very interesting.
I've got a question for Ben, if I may. I was wondering what your view was in terms of, because you've gone through this process, what do you think is the best way to engage with, I guess, the key points within your own ecosystem? How did you go through that process of saying, you know, instead of integrating, you know, working with 100, you know, we're just going to work with these 2 or 3. What would you recommend in terms of that process?
Yeah, no, great question. I think for us, while it probably wasn't the most polished way of doing things in the first place, because it was obviously our kind of first strike of this, we started with what was important to us and what we wanted to tackle as an Insurtech. We really started with that mission and worked, you know, what do we want to keep in-house? What are we really looking to achieve here? And then from there, we can really see the areas which we needed to bolster externally. And that kind of started up the partner search, which was fairly extensive, and we spoke to a large number of partners. So it was an incredibly kind of difficult and competitive position, but it really helped us kind of whittle down to the partners we found best fitted kind of our approach and shared our enthusiasm.
Excellent.
I've just been sent a question from Stephen Moore from Sequence, which I think is largely for you, Ben, but I'm sure we'd appreciate your opinions, Rich and Andrew, from the partner side as well. But it's kind of, how do you protect your own like secret sauce if you're partnering with many agencies? Is there a risk that the value of your IP is diluted across your ecosystem? And in effect, who owns the proposition or the product?
Absolutely. No, it's a fantastic question. And it's something we had to think very long and hard about, whether we just completely isolate ourselves and just really bring everything in-house, hire in-house. But I think we decided, okay, which areas are fairly well established and fairly standard externally and readily available externally. Is there much of a point us reproducing those different areas at 10 times the cost as what we could kind of bring in-house? And where do we want to innovate? So I think it really comes down to, again, which parts of the value proposition do you think your value is going to come out of in the future? And we really see that being that customer relationship, innovation of products. So that's kind of where we see our IP. You know, it's maybe less down the kind of the value of the ecosystem, but more kind of obviously you have to value yourself around where you see your value proposition in the future.
Rich and Andre, I don't know if there's anything that you do from the Picasso or Genesis side that you feel gives Insurtech kind of more security or trust when you're discussing with them about partnering with these ecosystems for their own value as well?
Yeah, look, I suppose when it comes to ecosystems, we shouldn't be shy about talking about the pros and the cons of them. You know, if you're piecing together a 5 or 6 groups of technology to try and create one value proposition for someone like Karma as an example, there's always the risk that one of those entities might fall away. The nice part is that there's other people to replace it. So, you know, it isn't that there is only one person who is doing this particular part of the ecosystem. There are multiple players in that space where we can obviously tweak and change it around. The question regarding IP is a great one, because we've often come across this consideration where Insurtechs will say, look, we own this particular piece of the value chain, or how we're onboarding the customer, or this particular offering. Therefore, we want to retain this because there's a perception, or at least there's some sort of a driver, that having this IP means that I can trade at a slightly higher multiple, and therefore I'll increase my value of my Insurtech for next Series A, Series B funding round, etc. That can be the same by using the combination of ecosystems. So I mean, if we've got 30 partners in our ecosystem, an a la carte menu effectively that people can pick from and go, I want to use a little bit of this, I want to use Picasso here, I want to use this data integration points over here. Now, how many combinations can you come up with? 30 of 30? I mean, it's billions. So you can really start creating very unique offerings utilizing multiples of iterations of the same partners. Not one of our clients uses the same set of partners in the ecosystem. And having direct contracts with those ecosystem players can also help alleviate your concerns about where does the power at least sit. So we, as an example, would encourage Armour Karma to have direct relationships with people like Bouquet, So Inform, and their other partners. We merely facilitate it. We don't participate in it.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's the usual stuff around contracts, agreements, and all of that sort of stuff that I think it needs to be a lot more fundamental than that, in terms of people really understanding what their core business is, and as Ben was saying, what is our core value proposition, and being really clear on that. And that's correct. That's right for Armour Karma. It's equally right for ourselves. We're not an insurer, and we have no ambitions to do that. Neither are we a platform provider, neither are we whatever else. We're in this to do data enrichment and provide value to our clients in that way. So and I think obviously on a micro level of that, with each organization and their extended ecosystem, it's just being very transparent and open, communicating, and being very clear about what your part to play in that overall ecosystem is, and making sure that that's agreed kind of up front, and that you stick to that obviously along the way.
Thanks. I've actually just got another question just from me, really, is that, Rich, at the beginning you spoke about the regulation, and you referenced the use of open banking and how you use that as well. And recently this year, the FCA did a consultation on open insurance, and we found within Insurtech UK, there's a massive split about whether it's a benefit or whether it's a threat to the Insurtechs or the insurance system, because I think, linking on to like Stephen's question, insurance can sometimes be closed off, and very much this is what we're doing and we want to keep it private. So I just kind of wanted to think about your thoughts on the impact of open insurance on the sector, and whether the FCA is going to look to introduce it to something similar like they are with open banking, and whether it will be a threat or a really good resource for the sector.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's quite a long way to go in terms of defining exactly what that looks like. How will it work? It's a highly regulated sector, just as finance is, and obviously they've made it work pretty well in open banking. The rates of how that's being taken up are very positive. So it's kind of how it's regulated, what it's used for, I think. And if you take the open banking example, you're not able to use it for the wrong reasons. It does rely on explicit consumer consent to access that data. And there's a lot of guidance around that to say, actually, it's the consumer's data. This is how it must be used. It needs to be entirely transparent. They need to be kept, up to date every step of the way, and it needs to be absolutely for the consumer's benefit. So I think that there is a big opportunity there for those, organisations, and obviously I think Insurtech's are ideally placed to take advantage of that can operate within that, within those realms, and keep their eye on actually what's happening here. Is there a the usual win-win, because it has to be a win for the consumer, because otherwise they're not going to consent to their data being used, which is how it needs to work, really. So I think there's obviously a lot more definition, a lot more discussions, a lot more debate that needs to happen in that area. But I think as long as it's approached in those ways, then I think it will be a positive thing. Excellent. Any other thoughts? Any other questions from anybody? No. Well, shall we draw it to a close at that point? Well, yeah. Thank you very much for everybody coming on. Really appreciate it. Obviously, get in touch if you want to hear any more from any of us. And thanks for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.